That's good. We ended the war, when I was driving the Colonel, we ended the war in the Hurricane Forest, actually Hart's Mountains, really. Hart's Mountains is like Hollywood, that's where they make the movies, and also your bird feed, Hart's bird feed, that's the Hart's Mountains. And we met the Russians 60 miles from Leipzig. And none of our outfit, none of the enlisted men could stay there, or other officers. And it was your Colonel MacDonald and myself and a couple other officers and their drivers were the only ones that could stay there because the Russians were stealing everything and doing, well, we should have went through, but we didn't. But that's another story. And but anyway, we were there maybe 5 or 6 days, explaining to them what was going on, and then the Russians took over, and we went back to Germany. I think it was near Cologne, if I remember right. And then we went.
What did John think of the Russians?
Yeah.
No, what did he think of them?
He didn't think much of the Russians. They gave us vodka, and you know our cups were big, and we threw half of it out. We drank a little bit to be nice for them, but that was about it. And your colonel didn't like, or the general at that time he's a colonel. He did not like the Russians, and he told me so. Yeah.
He's a patent man.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He was quite a politician too. He was really good, and he really got along good with the German officers. He made them toe the line. And one time we were coming over a hill, just him and I. And that's where I got one of my Luger pistols. He gave that one to me. He had enough. I got two, a P-38 and a Luger. And this, I think it was a lieutenant of the German Army, walked out right in front of us. So I almost hit him and put on the brakes. And he put his hands up. We never even had to pull a gun on him. He sat right up in the hood, and we took him back to headquarters. That was the easiest one we had. Yeah. That was a long while ago. Yeah. So, yeah.
I think that's all I've got for you, Ken.
Yeah, I got to tell you one more thing about him. I rode motorcycles when I first went into the 4th Cavalry, and then I switched over to the armored car. But anyway, I met a Canadian motorcyclist, and they gave me a leather jacket, which was like a vest when it went down to your knees. And it was really cold, you know. And actually, it was the coldest in decades, 44 and 45 was. And so I wore that, and I wore it with Lieutenant Colonel Dunn. He never said a word. And when your Colonel MacDonald took over, I wore that and got in a Jeep, and he says, geez, if I was a enlisted man, he said, I'd wear one of them too. So I thought that was funny. Yeah, so he never said anything about it. And I got to tell you one more thing about him. I only wore that a little bit. Lieutenant Colonel Dunn gave me a P-38 that he had one and I had one when I drove the armored car for him. And when I took over for the colonel in a Jeep, I had to give the gun back to Colonel Dunn because I didn't want to lose or anything on him. And so it must be 2 or 3 days I wore that gun, and he never said a word about that either, that I didn't have my 45 on it. I had that. So then later on, I took the handles off my 45, made a new one out of lucite, like I did the side wings on a Jeep. I had my wife's picture on one side of the handle. On the other side, my young son had just been born. And so I had them on each side. He remarked about that too. He says, that's nice handles you got on that gun, son. I says, thank you, sir. That's all was ever said about that. So
all right, well, thanks, Ken.
that shows that he was a regular man, even though he was a West Pointer and a big, you know, colonel and everything. He never threw his rank at you. He was a very, very nice person to be associated with. And he always made sure I had a place to sleep, and always made sure I had something to eat. Wherever we went, whether it was 7th Corps or some other outfit, 90th Infantry, what have you, he was always made sure I had a place before he told me to, you know, that we had to go back or something, that he needed me.
Yep.
So I hope I haven't bored you.
No, not a bit.
Anything else that I can think of that you want to know? I'll try to remember.
Maybe some of the others.
What's that?
Not from me, but maybe some of the other folks.
Oh, okay.
I have just a couple of questions, Ken. This is Ellie MacDonald and Ellie MacDonald Kepler, and I too am Randy's sister.
Oh, good.
And I also am the niece of General John. And I just wondered, what was the total length of time that you served with the general?
I was with him for 8 months from, I'm thinking now, I think it's November the 29th when he took over in 1944 until he made general the end of June, I think it was, of 45. He made general and left us, and by that time we had ended the war with we met the Russians, like I said before, and we went to the cigarette camps. I went to either Camels or Chesterfield, I can't remember, and he went to oh dear, infantry outfit, but I can't remember which one. When they made him a brigadier general, and so he said goodbye to me. At that time, we were driving around, going to the different cemeteries, and he was giving out awards and making speeches, and that's how
You were a very young man then.
Yes, I was with the colonel. Let's see, when he took over 44, I was 21, and I was 22 when he ended. Yeah, 22. February 2nd. My birthday is February 2nd. So that's about it. Yeah. And Colonel Dunn, if I remember right, from the things that Mark has been giving me, he was 9 years older than me, and I can't remember. Colonel MacDonald was older than that. Colonel Dunn was probably about 29 when I first went in, about 31 when I went to drive for Colonel MacDonald, and Colonel Tully was older than that. He was older when I went to Fort Meade. And talking about Colonel Tully, when I went in April of 42, they had just continued the horse cavalry and went mechanized. So when I went in November of 42, we were all mechanized. But they had one horse left, and that was the colonel's horse, and he rode it every Sunday on the parade grounds. That was funny too. Anything else, hon?
I don't think so. You had a lot of mechanized stuff and one horse, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And
well, thank you very much, Ken.
thank you so much for talking with me, and I hope I haven't bored all of you folks. And it's been a pleasure to me. I just can't believe it that I'm doing this. It just doesn't seem that after all these years, And then I went on the Leatherstocking Honor flight down to Washington last October, and that's when it all started with all these fellows with the Patriot Guards and the girls. It's just been a wonderful experience, and to have something done like this today, it's great. I hope I haven't bored all of you and gave you some information. Is there anything else that you can think of that you would like to know? Well, I'll tell you one more thing. In Cherbourg, this is with Colonel Tully, though. My radio operator, Johnny Kluzak, he got some eggs out of a farmer's hen house, and we had fresh eggs that night, and Colonel Tully, he joined us that night. He had a couple of fresh eggs, too. That's the kind of memories you remember.
Hey, what about the pheasants? What about the pheasants?
Oh, yeah. Mark just mentioned, when we were in England, we were in Singleton's, where we were for 6 months getting ready for the invasion, and they had a big house. It was almost like a castle that the headquarters was in, and the enlisted men were in a Quonset hut outside there, and every night this Bobby would come through. That was a policeman with his great big hat and everything, a little bit tired bicycle, a little bit of skinny tires on it, and he'd walk in and see him. We had a potbelly stove on each end of the Quonset hut, and so one day one of the guys caught a pheasant. Well, the pheasants and the deer over there belonged to the Queen, and anyway, he was going to cook that pheasant, and he had feathers all over, and Bobby comes in and he looks over, and he's seen the feathers on the floor. He never said a word. He just says, "Have a good day, folks," and went on out the door. We thought that was funny too. Had a lot of good memories like that. Anything else?
Hey, Ken, this is John Tully. Good to talk to you again.
Oh, good, John. How are you doing?
I had a question. Mark sent those photos of you with your military motorcycle, and you look like the Hollywood movie star with that Harley Davidson motorcycle in 1942 or 43.
42. We left Fort Meade, South Dakota in January, 35 below, and went to the desert in California, 135. It's that much difference. And we found out that the motorcycles don't work good in the sand, so that's when we went over into the armored car. We got rid of the motorcycles.
Okay, that was my question, was whether or not use the motorcycles in Europe at all?
No, not in our outfit. We didn't have any in our outfit at all. They were all either Jeeps, armored cars, scout cars, half tracks, and small tanks. And like I was just telling about Colonel MacDonald, on Christmas Day in the Hurricane Forest there, Humane, he directed the tanks, and we had to ride right alongside of the tanks and the armored cars. He stood right up there with that big bar I had on the front of the Jeep to hold on to, and he directed that. And Colonel Tully, that was your grandfather. Every Sunday he would ride his horse on the parade grounds. That's the only horse that was left. I can't remember his name.
Right.
I try to think of the horse's name, but I can't. That was very. It was a very. One man was an enlisted man. That's all he did was take care of that horse.